Now we're moving on to the recession, and the next question, please, is from Nick Clinch. Nick, what's your question?
Once out of recession, should our government abandon desires for sustained economic growth?
Once out of the recession, should our government abandon desires for sustained economic growth? And we'll start with Adrian on this one.
Well, I think it's a very fundamental question about how we measure the success of our economy and the success of our society. Is it right that economic success is measured purely on gross national product or on economic growth in conventional terms? I think it's not right. I think it doesn't look at the number of jobs we have. I think it doesn't look at the level of stress in society. It doesn't look at how happy people are. It doesn't look at the extent of poverty that we have. It doesn't look at how successful the health service or the education system are. It doesn't look at whether we're tackling climate change or whether we're using the Earth's resources in a sustainable way that will protect the planet for future generations. We need to have an economy that's put on a sustainable footing by investing in new jobs in green industries and things like renewable energy, insulating people's homes, better public transport, localised agriculture, reuse and repair schemes. These things could all be invested in. Our manifesto from the European elections this year was costed and showed that you could create 1 million new jobs in green industries in the UK, many of which other countries are already leading the way in, and it would be a matter of copying them. So I think it's fundamental to having a healthy society as well as a stable economy in the future that we measure economic success in a different way using a range of indicators. And I think equally it's absolutely essential that we start to re-regulate the banks, that we tackle the problems that caused the credit crunch and move away from the speculation on the gambling on the global stock exchange, the irresponsible levels of lending and interest rates that created the credit crunch in the first place.
So do you think, in terms of sustained economic growth, it could be achieved through investing in green technologies?
Well, it depends on how you measure economic growth, doesn't it? I think
but the basic point that if you emphasise more on green technologies, it could be sustained, in a nutshell. I mean, don't
in terms of job creation,
yeah.
Yes. In terms of job creation and in terms of a healthy and stable economy, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. Any comments at all on this question? Yes, this gentleman at the front, please.
Adrian, you talk about job creation, but isn't it economic growth that actually leads to creating jobs in the private sector? The government can't be solely responsible for creating jobs in green technologies.
Thank you very much. Any other comments at all? Someone on the back just there.
You talk about re-regulating the banks, but how do you actually plan about doing that with control of the people who run it, like the directors?
Okay, thank you very much. Any other comments at all? Okay, we'll move on to Phil now. Phil, do you want to take into account the comments as well?
Yeah, I think we do need sustained economic growth, but we want a sustainable economic growth as well. And the reason that our belief that we had as, we regularly said as the Labour Party that we tackled boom and bust or ended boom and bust, and the reason we were wrong and proved wrong about that is we put too much faith in the banking industry and the financial services industry, which is important, but we put all our eggs in one basket, as it were, and actually Adrian is absolutely right. We didn't do enough to also keep our manufacturing base supported and invested in. And I also agree with him that green technologies and the potential for green jobs should be an absolute priority in that. They can't be the only area, but they should be a huge priority. So yes, we do need economic growth, but it's got to be sustainable this time as well, and we can't repeat the mistakes we made before. On the banking point, one of the ways of ensuring it's sustainable next time is a banking system that is more regulated. We didn't regulate the banks enough. We were continually being told we were over-regulators and that we should deregulate by the Conservatives. So we both made a mistake on this, but we do need tougher regulation of the banks. We need to be tougher on banks' bonuses. We need to be tougher about what they can and can't invest in. And when we eventually re-privatise the banks that are now government-controlled, they can't go back to their old ways, and we need to legislate for that.
So you're saying you do agree that it's the end of boom and bust? It didn't actually happen. So when Gordon Brown said we'll end boom and bust.
Well, it didn't.
So you are very honest about that.
We came to the edge of going bust. We didn't, and we only didn't because the government put in place the investment at the 50. We borrowed to invest to prevent us going bust. But the fact that we even got to the point of needing to do that, of course.
But you're admitting the Prime Minister was wrong.
Was fueled by a global economic crisis.
Sure.
But we didn't do enough.
But you're admitting the Prime Minister was wrong then, in terms of saying it's the end of boom and bust.
We were wrong to think we'd ended boom and bust. And of course, it didn't, did it? We've just been through a period.
Yeah. Okay, so any other comments at all on that? Yes, the gentleman just over there.
I'm American, so I don't actually know much about how you guys dealt with this situation, but over there it seemed that they used taxpayers' dollars to bail out the banks so the banks could keep everyone in debt. And I just wondered how more regulation and supporting the banks in such a way would solve this kind of problem.
Okay, definitely. Okay, next comment, please. Just the gentleman at the front, sorry.
Yeah, so on the issue of more regulation, I think it's fine to add more regulation, but you don't fundamentally change the incentives in the banking system and the culture of greed. I think we need a banking system that works more for people.
I'll just add two areas that I think are really important in response to the gentleman's question. And forgive me, I'm not sure if it was sustained or sustainable economic growth, because I think both are actually important separate points that have just been teased out by these guys. But I do disagree with a couple of points that we made here. One is, it depends how you measure economic growth. You measure economic growth pretty simply. It's about the pound in your pocket, and that's what people know out there. That is the important point. It's about how much a pint of beer costs here. It's about how much a book costs. It's about how much a litre of fuel costs. And those things are the things that people need us to sort out when we're talking about economic growth for the future. And so what I firmly believe in, and what my party would do if we form the next government, is free up business and jobs. That is the key point. We need to be able to get job creation going so that everyone, when we leave this room, actually has a job to go to, for one thing, but also most importantly, so that the people who are already out there in the jobs market struggling can actually pull through that, and that is sustained economic growth. So I'm talking about things like getting rid of the tax on new jobs, which is represented in this current tax code on the national insurance side. I'm talking about a national loan guarantee scheme that will actually lend to small businesses and medium and large businesses, unlike perhaps the current banks have been doing. And I'm talking about cutting red tape drastically so that the people who run studies here, and indeed us, as I say, when we go out of this room, can actually get simply and straightforwardly into a job without being held back by the various systems and superstructures that go across us. The other thing I really want to pick up on is public spending, and I'm glad that Phil over there recognises that his Prime Minister, formerly his Chancellor, did not abolish boom and bust, but the key point that Phil missed, we haven't evaded bust, we're still going there. This government is still racking up the spending and hasn't yet admitted that we're not able to keep spending anymore. There is no money to keep putting in. It's now, I'm afraid, no longer a question of investment to stop us going over the edge. We've gone over the edge. We've got to get back. It's now a question of how we can best balance those books, and that's what we've got to look for sustained growth.
To respond very, very quickly to that point, very quickly.
Yes,
if we had not, as Chloe argues and her leader argued, not put in that £50 billion...
That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about public spending. I'm talking about you racking up over your 12 years.
That is spending.
Public spending,
that
not
50
the
billion,
bank piece specifically, but the general...
If we not increase...
Guys, we're going to have to move on to the next question, I'm afraid. We've run out of time. I'd love to carry on. As you say, we don't have much time in these question time style shows.
I was asked
Very
a question
briefly
about job creation, and I feel I should answer it, because I think the answer is no, that you can have plenty of job creation that isn't a result of economic growth in conventional terms. For example, if you have an economy that results in far more goods being repaired rather than thrown away, you have lots of jobs created in repair shops, which we always used to have thousands of in this country. We don't have any more because the economic system's set up in a way where it's cheaper to throw it away. In conventional terms, that would mean less economic growth because you wouldn't be producing as many new goods and then throwing them away afterwards. But in terms of job creation, it would be much more sustainable. So that's an example of why I don't agree with the basis of your question.
On that note, can we go back to the questioner, please? Phil, there's Nick. Sorry, forgive me, I'm getting confused with my names this evening. Nick.
It just seems to me that our whole economy is based around continually growing, and I don't see how we can possibly sustain a planet where our environment is going to continue, where we just keep on making things and growing, to be honest. Because you can't have boom without having bust eventually.